Okay. Tonight, Andrea and I will continue the discussion on the paramitas, sometimes called the six perfections. Tonight, we're going to talk about wisdom, which is the sixth and last paramita. And wisdom is also known as discernment, insight, or understanding. Thich Nhat Hanh describes the paramitas as six techniques for happiness. Paramita means from this shore, you go to the other shore. We've heard that before about crossing to the other shore. Wisdom, Prajna, is said to be the mother of all Buddhas. Our desire to cross to the other shore, the shore of peace, love, happiness. When I think about wisdom, I think about my grandmother. Her name was Katie. I called her Ma. She was the wisest woman that I've ever known. She was actually the wisest person I ever knew. Merriam-Webster's definition of wisdom is the ability to discern inner qualities and relationships, insight, good sense, judgment. Both qualities apply to my grandmother, Mom. In searching wisdom as it relates to the paramitas, I discovered another level and understanding of what wisdom is. It has to do with understanding the insights of interbeing and the connectedness of all things. It's about knowing things precisely as they are, understanding reality, not what we want it to be. Wouldn't that be nice if it was what we wanted it to be? I realized that these qualities also applied to my grandmother. She taught me that things just happen, and what I did about them is what was important. She also taught me that it is my responsibility to take care of the environment, and she told me the reasons why. She would say, "Who do you think gonna pick up after you when I drop something in the street or throw something into the lake?" I used to wonder, why did she get so upset when I did stuff like that? When I was angry or sad, she reminded me that those were my feelings for the moment and that this too shall pass. She was teaching me the insight of impermanence, that all things are subject to change, love, hate, joy, sorrow, despite our wanting them to remain the same. As simple as this is, we need reminders of the truth of it. We are on the journey to the other shore when we remember that all things will change. When our loved ones are irritated with us or vice versa, we oftentimes take it personally, forgetting the reality of impermanence. Wisdom is also, excuse me, learning about emptiness and that we are empty of a separate self. Everything is made up of many elements. I know that I am a part of my mother and my grandmother. My children and grandchildren are a part of me. Regardless of how I may feel about them at the time, I cannot escape that we enter are. This is a fact. Another way to look at it is this paper that I'm reading from does not have a separate self either. Now, this is where it got, ooh, because this took me a while to just actually get this. It is made up of the rain, the sunshine, the flower, the forest, the logger, and many other elements. Because the paper is made up of non paper elements, it is empty of a separate self. This is the insight of emptiness. It basically means that nothing exists on its own without relying upon other things. That all things exist as interdependent phenomena. Thich Nhat Hanh writes in The Heart of the Buddha that right view is an insight we have into the reality of life, a living insight that fills us with understanding and love. Knowing what is going on inside and outside of ourselves. Right view is also a part of wisdom. It's not an ideology, a system, or even a path. It is the insight we have into the reality of life, a living insight that fills us with understanding, peace, and love. Although wisdom is the sixth paramita, it can be practiced and studied in any order, because to fully immerse oneself in one of them as a practice is the same as being immersed in all of them. Sylvia Clare, a mindfulness teacher, learned about the power of the six paramitas as a vehicle for self-discovery and exploration from a workshop she attended by Martin Pitt. He suggested, now I thought this was ingenious. He suggested using dice to learn the paramitas. By throwing one die, and whichever number comes up, that would be the paramita you would focus on cultivating for the day. So if any of you have this overwhelming desire to study the paramita, it is definitely a wonderful way to do that. I will end with wisdom from the Dalai Lama and Thich Nhat Hanh. The Dalai Lama says, there are only 2 days in the year that nothing can be done. One is called yesterday, and the other is called tomorrow. Today is the right day to love, believe, do, and most of all, the most important one, to live. And from Thich Nhat Hanh, with his genius, and this one I love because I had to think about it, and I continue to think about it. Guarding knowledge is not a good way to understand. Think about that. Understanding means to throw away your knowledge. Now, after I read that, of course, I had to go around and tell everybody this and say, what do you think about that? I gave them 2, but that was the one I really wanted them to talk about. And what's interesting is some people said, I don't know about that, which is what I said when I first read it. And others said, when I explained what I thought it meant, yeah, that might make some sense. I love these things that make me think. So I think what I'm doing is throwing away my knowledge so I can understand. And I'm going to leave here now, and Andrea will continue.
Thank you, Jinaki. So when I spoke with Jinaki and studied up on this sixth paramita of wisdom, um, I came to mind that I had a really good friend named Carl who I had known for over 27 years, and he passed last year after a battle with multiple forms of cancer. He'd had lung cancer, and then that went into remission, and then he'd had a brain tumor that came and went and returned again. And when I first knew Carl, when I started working with him in 1995, he could be a bit challenging to work with. He had a Harley. He had been in the Vietnam War. I could tell he'd likely been a bit of a hellion in his youth, and you definitely needed to know your stuff when you were working with Carl, over time I started to detect a little bit of a change. He was more patient, and I realized that when Facebook came along, that he'd gotten into Zen Buddhism, because he posted some really thought-provoking things on Facebook, and we used to go out to dinner with him, he and his wife, periodically, and I realized, looking back, once I started participating with the Sangha here, that he posted a lot of Thich Nhat Hanh, on his Facebook page. I was like, oh, this is great. And I love it that it's still there, because I can just go back and look for some of the phrases he would share. One of the pieces of wisdom he often shared was one moon in every pond, the one moon. And I just thought that for me was one of the things of thinking about, well, it is the same moon, and whatever pond you're seeing it in, it's still that one moon. And he also often shared the wisdom he had gained over time through writing haiku poetry. So at the time that I didn't know about the brain tumor or what the status of it was, but I'll say that he approached it all with great fascination of what was happening to him. He always looked at it like, he was obviously pleased when the cancer in his lungs went into remission, but what was going on, in his head and all was still fascinating to him, and how the treatments were and all that. So he really approached it in a way that I'd never really encountered anyone approach that type of illness. So one day I just happened to see he posted in April of 2021 this haiku, and then he referenced a previous haiku he'd written back in 2016. So his post said on April 2021 was, "Tumor on my brain, ephemeral light flickers, who I am unchanged." From August 2016, in the same April post, he posted his prior haiku, which was, "Ephemeral light, neither candle wax nor air, but somewhere between." And then he explained, "A candle flame is more than just a metaphor for human awareness. It is deeply similar. Hydrocarbons in the candle wax combine with oxygen from the air to become carbon dioxide and water vapor in the air, releasing the energy of sunlight stored in those hydrocarbons. Essentially, the same process occurs in our bodies to fuel our movements, our intelligence, and stunningly, our ephemeral awareness." In their 60s hippie song, "Get Together," the Youngbloods said, "We are but a moment's sunlight fading in the grass." In a very real sense, our awareness is stored sunlight made wonderfully complex. It is indeed ephemeral. Among the billions of humans alive and who have ever lived, each awareness is the single brief flicker of a firefly. And against the ages of the earth and of the universe, each is almost imperceptibly small. Yet, I remain perplexed by the need for so many religious and philosophical systems to postulate some life after this one. As fleeting as it is just as wonderfully rich. That the universe could become aware of itself, and in such a short span comprehend so much is simply stunning. Surely that is quite enough. So that was the end of his post then. And I loved that, reading that again. And I read that Thich Nhat Hanh says mindfulness is the energy we can produce in our daily lives to bring our paradise back. So I think Carl had done that. It was truly fascinating, even inspiring to watch him and to become such good friends with him as he evolved and ultimately transitioned. I even talked to him, in some of the last days, just with the brain tumor was having an impact on him. And his wife asked, "Can you talk to him? He's talking about computer stuff," and I have no idea what he's saying. And it seemed like every time after I talked to him, he'd feel better. He thought the MRI machine wasn't, on the right operating system. But he had lived a full lifetime, and I believe he had indeed brought his paradise back. And I'm just grateful to have been able to be on the planet at the same time in this state that we're in currently now. So that's it for me. Andrea bowing out on that one.
So now we can open the floor for sharing